This is the story of Laila Carter, in a world that said compassion was weakness, until she proved kindness was power. Before you scroll away, hear this one. A single act of kindness almost cost a young woman her career, but what happened next changed an entire company. You're watching Blackview, where every ordinary person hides an extraordinary truth. Stay till the end and don't forget, hit subscribe and turn on that bell because you deserve a reason to believe in good again. Tell us in the comments which country you're watching from. He was known in the city as the man who ran numbers faster than emotions, a CEO who measured kindness in billable hours and valued efficiency above empathy. His name was David Rowan, the celebrated head of a sleek tech firm famous for its ruthless pace and glittering profits. Every corner of the glass building reflected his philosophy. Clear, cold, immaculate. Yet on the 15th floor, where the hum of computers mingled with the faint scent of coffee and ambition, a quiet force of warmth had begun to change the temperature. Her name was Laila Carter. Laila's laughter never fit the office's sterile rhythm. She joined Project Integration 6 months earlier, freshly graduated with a computer science degree and a heart that believed compassion could live alongside career goals. In a place where everyone raced for recognition, she slowed down to help the new intern debug code. In a culture where mistakes meant public scolding, she calmed trembling co-workers before presentations. When colleagues whispered that she was too nice, she only smiled. Better to overcare than understand, she'd say, turning back to her monitor. Every day she carried that creed, unaware that invisible eyes were beginning to notice her light, some with admiration, one with irritation. Her supervisor, Trent Lawson, lived for targets. He worshipped charts that rose and numbers that multiplied. Laila's kindness to him was inefficiency disguised as virtue. "We're not running a therapy center," he muttered one afternoon after catching her guiding a contractor through system errors long past her own shift. Yet even as he clicked his tongue, he couldn't deny the results. Her projects ran flawlessly, her team respected her, and clients frequently mentioned her patience. Trouble began when the company landed a government cybersecurity deal, massive, high pressure, and under brutal deadlines. Trent was put in charge, and Laila, being both meticulous and cooperative, became his favorite workhorse. For 3 weeks she slept only in fragments, often staying until midnight to ensure the system updates synchronized without glitch. Though exhausted, she never snapped. She brought extra snacks for colleagues, left encouraging notes near monitors, and adjusted schedules so new team members could rest. When David Rowan toured the floor one moonless evening, he noticed the soft murmur of her voice, teaching a trainee to fix an algorithm. She didn't see him watching, half hidden by the tinted glass, a silhouette framed by the cold city lights. That week, tension climbed. Trent's forecasts lagged dangerously, and he blamed soft attitudes. At 9 p.m. Friday, when most lights had gone dark, he summoned the team. "No more hand-holding," he barked. "If you can't keep up, you're out. Kindness won't keep this contract." His glare landed squarely on Laila. Something in her posture collapsed, then straightened. She met his eyes, calm but steady. "Kindness doesn't slow progress, sir. It prevents people from quitting before they succeed." The words floated like whispered rebellion through the fluorescent air. On Monday, she was removed from the core project under the pretext of role rotation. No one dared question it. By Thursday, whispers spread. Her reassignment was punishment dressed as policy. Yet she kept smiling, refusing bitterness. When a temp worker cried in the break room after a technical error, Laila comforted her, rewriting code for hours until the system stabilized. That night, Trent reported her again. Overstepping boundaries, disruptive empathy. The phrasing sounded absurd even to HR, but in a world ruled by hierarchy, paperwork triumphed over decency. Then came the morning that changed everything. The sun knifed through the boardroom blinds as David Rowan prepared to meet international investors. The cybersecurity project dashboard flashed red. Critical system failure. Panic rippled across departments. Trent ripped off his headset. Rollback corrupted. Nothing syncing. Everyone scrambled. David demanded solutions. Silence answered, except for one quiet voice from the back, carrying a calm like the eye of a storm. "I can fix it." Heads turned. Laila stepped forward, clutching her worn laptop. Trent froze. "You're not authorized," David cut him off. "Let her." Within minutes, Laila traced the bug, An overlooked duplication loop triggered during last night's patch. Her fingers moved with grace, each keystroke methodical. Her mind steady despite the pressure. She coordinated the panicking team, explaining each step as she worked. 15 tense minutes later, the dashboard blinked green. Systems restored. Relief exploded around the room. For a breath, joy replaced anxiety. Then Trent pushed his chair back. "Lucky guess," he muttered, unwilling to cede credit. David said nothing, only watched Laila with a narrowed gaze that mixed surprise with something softer. After the investors left, smiling and impressed, he called Trent and Laila to his office. Trent launched a rehearsed speech about protocols and team dynamics. Laila stood quietly, her palms damp, but her eyes bright. David leaned back in his leather chair. "Laila," he asked, "why didn't you tell anyone you could manage the rollback?" She hesitated. "Because, sir, I reported the flaw last week. It was marked low priority. I didn't want to make anyone look bad, I just wanted it fixed." Something flickered across David's face, perhaps disbelief, perhaps respect. "And tonight you saved us a breach worth millions." Before she could respond, Trent interrupted. "With all due respect, sir, she violated hierarchy. We can't have freelancers within the system architecture." "She's not a freelancer," David said quietly. "She's our employee. I recommend termination," Trent insisted, voice brittle but defiant. "For disregarding procedure." The room fell silent, layered with shock. Laila stared at her shoes. David watched her a long moment, then said nothing. The meeting ended coldly. By noon next day, a memo circulated. Laila Carter, contract terminated. The reason listed: non-compliance with management directives. It hit the office like winter wind. Co-workers exchanged stunned glances. Some protested quietly, others folded beneath fear. Laila packed her small desk. A cactus plant, a framed photo of her mother, and a thumb drive of code snippets she wrote for practice. As she reached the elevator, the same intern she had once mentored ran up. "Ms. Carter, why? You didn't do anything wrong." Laila forced a trembling smile. Sometimes doing right looks wrong to the wrong eyes. The doors slid shut with a muted sigh. Outside, sunlight spilled over the glass tower, indifferent to her departure. She walked toward the bus stop, shoulders heavy but spirit unbroken. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. "Miss Carter," the crisp voice asked. "This is Maya Liu from the Department of Infrastructure. We were observers in today's investor meeting. Could we discuss a potential collaboration? Your composure under pressure was impressive." Laila blinked, too stunned to form words. "Oh, of course," she finally stammered. Later that afternoon, in a small cafe overlooking the city, Maya explained their need for an ethical AI consultant to oversee data transparency for government initiatives. "We need people who understand that compassion builds safer systems. Your attitude today, saving the project without humiliating anyone, spoke louder than any resume." Laila listened, heart fluttering between disbelief and hope. Maya smiled. "So, are you ready to start designing fairness into technology?" For the first time since morning, Laila laughed, a laughter both free and trembling. Life, it seemed, had a sense of irony. She had been fired for being too kind, yet that very kindness opened a door her ambition alone could not unlock. By evening, she sat on her balcony, watching the skyline burn orange against dusk. She thought of the colleagues still trapped inside sterile cubicles, of David Rowan calculating profits, unaware that kindness had just walked out with the best code his company ever produced. She whispered to the fading light, half prayer, half promise, "I won't dim again." Inside the office she left behind, David stood in his own silence. The investors had sent a message. "Compliments to your interpreter during crisis management. She conveyed genuine empathy." He frowned, realizing they meant Laila. He reached for his phone, scrolling through her HR record, then paused at her termination notice. For a long minute he said nothing, only stared at the word terminated, until letters blurred together like regret. That night, David Rowan didn't sleep. The city outside pulsed with its steady rhythm, tires whispering across wet asphalt, faint sirens melting into the distance, but his thoughts stayed trapped in the 15th floor boardroom. He replayed every detail, the fear in his team's eyes, the steady composure in Laila's voice. The moment green lights returned to the dashboard like rescued stars, Somewhere between spreadsheets and status reports, he recognized how extraordinary she had been, and somewhere after midnight, for the first time in years, guilt began to breach the armor of his control. On the other side of town, in a small apartment that hummed with second-hand appliances and the gentle snore of her grandmother, Laila drafted a new resume. She replaced phrases like junior analyst with system integrity specialist, half laughing at her own boldness. Yet as the cursor blinked patiently, doubt crept in. What if the next company punished empathy the same way? Her grandmother's brittle voice broke her spiral. "Baby, you got fired for loving people in a world scared of love. Don't let that world make you smaller." Laila smiled, kissed her grandmother's cheek and whispered, "I won't." Weeks passed. At the Department of Infrastructure, Laila dived into work unlike any she'd known, designing algorithms for public safety, auditing AI biases, ensuring technology served humans, not the other way around. Her colleagues valued her soft-spoken precision. Her supervisor, Maya Liu, often said, "You translate compassion into code." The phrase became a mantra pinned above Laila's desk. Each night as she closed her laptop, she remembered David's company not with bitterness but curiosity. Did he ever realize what they'd lost? He realized it fully the day his firm faced its next crisis. A system update introduced an unseen vulnerability, leading to a data leak that exploded across social media. Investors pulled back. Government clients froze contracts citing ethical concerns. In emergency meetings, David's analysts panicked, Trent shifted blame, and the PR department drafted sterile apologies. None of it sounded human. Sitting alone in his office while headlines screamed below, David finally admitted what the financial reports couldn't measure: the absence of trust. The woman who'd embodied it was gone. 2 days later, his assistant announced a visitor. "Ms. Maya Liu, Department of Infrastructure." David's eyes widened. When Maya entered, she carried a folder thick with documents. "Mr. Rowan," she began, voice polite but edged with purpose, "we've found inconsistencies in your company's reporting concerning algorithmic transparency. It appears a former employee raised similar concerns months ago." David didn't need to ask which one. Maya studied his expression. "She told us about non-disclosure of predictive bias metrics. Your last contract is under review." Her tone was firm but not cruel. As she turned to leave, David said quietly, "How is she?" Maya paused, half smiling. "She's thriving. Building a team around humanity's side of technology. Funny thing, people line up to work with someone who cares." Then she was gone, leaving silence thick enough to weigh on air. That evening, David sat at his desk, staring at the company mission statement engraved on the wall. Innovation through intelligence. Beneath it, he scribbled with a marker the missing half. Integrity through kindness. He didn't know why, only that it felt like truth finally written where numbers failed. Months flowed by. Laila's project under Maya's department gained national recognition for developing transparent AI frameworks. News outlets highlighted the young engineer who combined empathy and mathematics. One article opened with the line, "Fired for kindness, rehired by conscience." The headline circled social media, landing eventually on David's feed. Reading it, he felt a quiet sting, not jealousy but longing to connect purpose with profit the way she had. So he did something uncharacteristic. He called her. The ring startled Laila in her new office. Seeing his name flash across the screen sent a tremor through her chest. She almost ignored it, then answered, "Mr. Rowan?" "Laila," his voice softer than memory, "I owed you an apology long before today. I also owe you gratitude. You saved my company that day, and your ethics might save its future again if you're willing to help." Caution flickered behind her kindness. "You want consultancy?" "I want honesty," he said. "You build the kind we forgot how to measure." After a long pause, she replied, "Only if Trent Lawson isn't in the room." David almost laughed, not mockingly, but with the tenderness of a man rediscovering humility. "He's not. He resigned after the data leak. When they met in person, the atmosphere was strange yet peaceful, like revisiting a battlefield now turned museum." They sat across from each other, coffee steaming between them. David admitted the mistakes, equating compassion with weakness, rewards with silence. Laila listened without triumph. "We fix systems the same way we fix code," she said. We expose the bug before it infects everything." He nodded slowly. Over the next month, she guided his firm in creating internal ethics teams. Employees once discouraged from empathy were now encouraged to mentor, to listen, to report issues fearlessly. Every shift in procedure echoed Laila's old motto: better to overcare than understand. The company's reputation recovered, not by spin, but by sincerity. Clients noticed, investors returned, and David, ironically, was hailed for revolutionizing corporate culture. When reporters asked what sparked the change, he answered simply, "A woman I fired taught me that kindness scales, yet for Laila the true victory came quietly." One evening, after giving a talk on ethical programming at a university, a nervous student approached her. "Ms. Carter," the girl murmured, "I thought caring too much would make me fail in tech, but hearing your story, I think maybe caring is the point." Laila glanced at the student's trembling notebook and smiled. "That's the future talking. Keep speaking it." As she left the auditorium, rain began to fall, soft, cleansing, rhythmic. She tilted her face upward, feeling each drop as a minor baptism. Somewhere in those droplets lived the cold boardrooms, the humiliation, the fired email, all dissolving into memory. In their place remained clarity. Compassion had not derailed her career. It had defined it. Meanwhile, David finalized a foundation in her name, the Carter Initiative for Ethical Innovation, without seeking credit. In the letter announcing its launch, he wrote, "Kindness once appeared inefficient until it saved a company's soul. Let this remind leaders that empathy is not charity. It's infrastructure." When Laila read the announcement later that night, emotions rushed through her like a sudden melody: surprise, gratitude, the ache of closure. She drafted an email but deleted it twice before typing simply, "Thank you for learning." The next morning, the two met again, this time on a conference stage at a tech ethics summit. Cameras flashed. David introduced her to the audience, not as a former employee, but as the conscience that corporate ambition forgot. When applause swelled, Laila blushed, yet her eyes gleamed with a quiet humor. Into the microphone, she said, "I wasn't too kind. The workplace was too afraid." Laughter rippled, followed by standing ovation. In that roar, she heard not vengeance but validation. As the lights dimmed, David leaned toward her. "You realize your story's in textbooks now?" She grinned. "Let's hope they study the code, not just the scandal." After the summit, she returned to her office overlooking the same skyline where it had all started. The tower of her old company shimmered across the river. Sunset painted it gold, not cold anymore. She whispered again, this time without bitterness, "Better to overcare." Then she opened a new document titled Chapter 2 and began typing plans for community education, guiding young coders not just to be smart but kind. Her grandmother sat nearby, knitting quietly, every loop a heartbeat of pride. "Told you, baby. The world comes around when you don't." Laila smiled, the glow of her screen reflecting in her eyes. "Yeah, Nana. Sometimes you just have to keep being the light until everyone else remembers they can see." Months drifted into a calm kind of momentum for Laila, the rare peace that follows a storm's cleanup. She had learned to navigate attention, the invitations to speak, the interviews, the viral clips quoting her line about kindness. The praise was flattering, but she measured success in subtler ways. The intern blossoming under her mentorship, the new father in her team who finally took paternity leave without guilt. The project finished ahead of schedule, because teammates trusted one another enough to ask for help. What she built was not merely software. It was culture, lines of code written in empathy. One Friday evening, she lingered in the office long after everyone had gone, reviewing the prototype for a civic safety AI that would predict energy grid failures before disasters struck. It was complex, messy, heavy on data integrity, the kind of challenge she adored. Her phone buzzed, a message from David. "Need your eyes on a document?" Urgent but delicate. An hour later, she found herself again in his building, the same tower she had exited months earlier, with a cardboard box. The air smelled the same, but her steps felt entirely different, steady, owned. David met her at the elevator. He looked less like the marble, cold executive she remembered. There were worry lines around his eyes, but also warmth. "There's an anonymous whistleblower letter," he explained. "Claims one of our branch managers is falsifying sustainability reports. The trouble, Inside sources say the language patterns match someone from the ethics team you helped form. Laila absorbed this quietly. If the system works, then even insiders can be questioned. That's not failure. He nodded, though unease lingered. I wanted your perspective first. I trust how you separate noise from truth. They moved into the conference room, once perfumed by arrogance and tension. Now it housed posters reminding employees of transparency and compassion. Laila examined the data trail. This letter isn't sabotage. Look, tonal cadence, contextual phrasing. Someone panicked, not plotting. She traced a keyboard stroke pattern, realizing it belonged to one of the junior analysts, a shy man who had attended her seminar on whistleblowing ethics. He probably discovered irregularities and feared being silenced. Instead of protocol, he chose fear's shortcut, the anonymous letter. David sighed. Then I owe him reassurance, not punishment. Exactly, she said. Courage isn't tidy. A slow smile crossed his face, that of a man still learning grace. Funny, your compassion keeps cleaning my messes even after promotion, she smirked. It's scalable now, she quipped, borrowing his old business language. For the next hour, they planned a transparent internal review that protected truth-tellers instead of shaming them. News of the approach spread, earning both departments commendations. More important to Laila, it proved to younger employees that companies could evolve beyond fear. A week later, the shy analyst thanked her quietly. I thought honesty would end me. You turned it into policy. As months turned into a year, David's firm and Laila's initiative became symbols of unlikely reform. Media stories that once chased scandal now chronicled redemption. Universities taught case studies on the kindness pivot. Through it all, Laila remained humble, though her grandmother teased that girl. You trending again. On the anniversary of her firing, David invited her to a modest celebration at the office rooftop. The sunset bled lavender and gold across the skyline. Employees mingled, laughter replacing the old sterile hum. Near the railing, David raised a toast, to the courage it takes to be decent. Glasses clinked. When he lowered his drink, he whispered to Laila, I once believed control was power. Turns out surrender to empathy takes more strength. She looked at him, half smiling. Then you finally debugged your humanity, Mr. Rowan, he chuckled. And you keep rewriting the code. Later that night, she stood alone, gazing at the city glittering far below. In each reflected window, she saw fragments of her journey. The cafeteria where she'd consoled a sobbing teammate, the silent elevator ride after being fired, the cafe meeting that shifted destiny. Every moment had built this mosaic of resilience. She thought of all the people labeled too kind, too soft, too human, and hoped they'd hear her story as permission to stay true. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Maya. International Ethics Commission wants you to chair their new program. Laila exhaled through a laugh that caught in her throat. The horizon shimmered. Guess the world's still listening, she whispered. Down below, the traffic lights blinked in steady rhythm, red to green to red, like a reminder that pauses are part of progress. She left the rooftop with calm certainty. Whatever stage awaited, her script remained the same. Lead with kindness, correct with clarity, and never apologize for light. The next morning, she drafted her keynote for the commission's opening session. The first line read, Power without kindness is noise. Kindness without power is a whisper. Together they make harmony. She smiled, satisfied, saved the document, and headed out to catch the sunrise. Her grandmother waved from the porch, yarn in hand. Off to melt more hearts, baby. Laila kissed her cheek. Off to rebuild them. As she walked down the steps, she thought again of the phrase that had once been weaponized against her. Too kind. Now it was her brand, her banner, proof that emotional intelligence could anchor technical brilliance. High above, morning rays painted the city's towers radiant, including the one that had once caged her. For the first time, she didn't see glass and steel. She saw mirrors reflecting second chances. Back inside his office, David watched the same sunrise. He saw Laila below crossing the street, a blur of purpose and possibility. He whispered to no one. She melted a corporation's heart. Maybe the world's next. And somewhere in every boardroom that ever mistook empathy for weakness, her story began to circulate, not as rumor, but as reminder, that the ones who lead with heart often end up leading. period. If Layla's story touched you, tap that like button and share it forward. Someone out there needs proof that grace still wins. See you in the next story, right here on Blackview.